Alrighty. So just like in our last couple of sections, I want to show you guys an ES2015 feature that makes this sort of thing super, super easy to work with. And that's classes. JavaScript has classes now. But the thing you have to understand about JavaScript classes is it's not that they created classes and mimicked or created them and changed the way prototypal inheritance works. JavaScript introduced classes, or ECMA script rather, introduced classes that are just syntactical sugar for all the code that we've been writing. But behind the scenes, they behave in the exact same way. So let's go ahead and take a look at classes. Let's go ahead and rewrite this last example using classes. Now, Chrome supports classes. As does Firefox and the latest version of Edge. Actually, you can hop on over to this awesome page, this awesome graph or spreadsheet that will show a bunch of different specific features and what the browser support is. So we see, if we come down here to class, we see that it's supported by Babel, it's supported by Edge 13 and Edge 14, supported by the latest version of Firefox and Chrome and so on. It'll even include support for Node, but it doesn't look like Node yet supports it. I don't know if they've updated yet for Node 6. No, Node 6 does support classes, so that's really cool. But if you're worried about the ability to use classes, you can always use Babel to take your code that uses this new feature and turn it into code that can be ran in legacy browsers. In fact, I will after I show you the syntax and how it works and how it relates to what we've been doing in this section, I'm going to show you guys what Babel will do to take that code and turn it back into something that can be ran in older browsers. But we'll start off by looking at the syntax. I'm basically going to rewrite this example with classes. So I'm going to do class person, and unfortunately ESLint is going to yell at me, but that's fine, whatever, I don't care. Well, I do care. I'm going to go ahead and add an ESLint RC. Whoops, I mean ESLint rc.json, and I'm just going to copy over that, and then I'm going to come back over here and maybe close the file, come down to the bottom, and there we go. ESLint is now happy. ESLint is a program that runs to make sure that your JavaScript is standards compliant and has good form and all that fun stuff, but you have to tell it to specifically enable support for classes, which is what ES6 true, that flag means. Anyway, so we have a class person, and class person has a constructor that takes in a name and a rank, and it has a say name, fire person, and give raises function. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing is the constructor, and I did not mean to zoom in there, is the constructor. And the constructor will take in a name and a rank. And we'll do this name equals name, this rank equals rank. Then we're going to say, what was that other functions? Say name, fire person, give raises. So say name will do console log hello, I am, plus this name. And then we have fire person, which will return false by default. And then we'll have give raises, which will return false. So that's our person. I can now say var Nelson equals new person, passing in Nelson as the thing and 10 as the rank, and var ble equals new person ble 5. So there's our class person. Now I can say Nelson.sayName, and I can say Nelson fire person ble, and it'll return false. So we see we've actually, this whole class person right here is basically the same thing as creating a prototype and creating a constructor function. And the constructor function is this function right here. It's a special function named constructor. All the other functions on this class are added to the prototype. So we can see that Nelson.proto is an object that has a fire person, give raises, and say name function. So, in fact, person.prototype is that same object. So it's literally what we did before, but with different syntax. So now we can say class manager. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a special bit of syntax to extend or to inherit from person. I'll say extends person and give it a constructor with a name and a rank. Now, when you when you extend a object and you want to call the base constructor function, you'd pass in super. So we'll do super name rank. So super is equivalent to what I did before, where I did manager person call this name rank. Super does that exact thing. And so for this, I can now go ahead and do a fire person overload, which will return this rank is greater than person rank. And now I can say var Steve, I guess, person Steve 90, or whoops, not person, manager. And now we can say Steve.fireperson Nelson, and that'll return true. So now we've overridden that. So now we can see Steve.proto, and we can see it has a constructor of name and rank, and it has a fire person overload, but it has nothing else. All the other methods are inherited from its prototype's prototype, which we can see by doing Steve.sayName. And we can keep on going. CEO extends manager, and then constructor name rank, super name rank, and then we can do fire person or give raises is return true, and then var mark equals new CEO, mark rank 9000, and then we can now do mark give raises, which returns true. So all of that stuff about prototypes, all of that stuff about object prototypes and function prototypes and all that stuff is now hidden from us using the syntax. And I think that's great. I like the syntax a lot. It's very clean, very easy to read. It looks a lot more similar to the kind of classes that you would see in Java or C# or C++. But again, you have to understand the basics of prototypes to understand the syntax, because it is just syntactical sugar for that. Let's take a look at that. Let's actually look at what this piece of code actually looks like to the browser. And we can do that by opening this up in our Babel transpiler. So we'll go to Babel Online, copy this over, and I'm going to delete all that. And I'm simply going to paste in this class person. And this is what we get. Now, what's interesting about this is it is actually doing something a little weird. It is doing a very similar thing to what we did before, but it's doing a little bit more than that. I'm wondering if I can get it to... There we go. So this is just with the constructor function. The var person equals new function. This is a constructor function just like we had before. And Babel inserts this class call check, which is just a sanity check, which isn't necessary to understand. And then we'll have a say hi function. And then the say hi function, once we start adding these properties, it goes in and it has this create class function, which does a bunch of crazy stuff. But it basically does the same thing as what we did before. So let's take off the say hi function and do class manager extends person and see what the code looks like. Now manager is a constructor function, and it's actually an iffy. Funny enough, this is going to be a immediately executed function, and this right here is the actual constructor function. And it does. It also has the inherits. And what does inherits do? If we look at inherits, you'll see right here, subclass.prototype equals object create superclass prototype. And then it also passes in this property descriptor. So you see that the code is a little bit more complicated because it's doing a little bit more stuff behind the scenes, but it amounts to doing the exact thing that we had done by hand, just with more type safety and sanity checks and a little bit more strict with how it defines the properties. Again, I'm not going to be discussing in this course properties, getters, and setters, and property descriptors, and all that stuff. That stuff is kind of coming into play right here. But the point is that this code is basically equivalent to what we had just written, just significantly smaller. And if you want to be able to use classes in your code without having to mess with the prototype stuff and doing what we did before in our previous example, then certainly go ahead and check out Using Modern JavaScript Today. I show you guys how to use Babel so that you can use this code in older browsers that don't yet support it, specifically Internet Explorer. But this is standardized syntax, by the way. This syntax was a part of ES2015. It's standardized, it's set in stone, it will be implemented one day across all browsers without having to go through something like Babel. But I just wanted to show you guys this for the sake of completeness. Just like what I did with our block level scoping and our arrow functions. But I think that about really wraps up prototypes. Prototypes are nothing more than a special property on an object that's used to locate properties on that object that aren't immediately defined. So you try to ask an object for a property it doesn't have, it looks at its prototype. That prototype object doesn't have it, goes to the next one, so on. And then we have function prototypes, which allow us to automatically set the prototypes of an object. And so I encourage people who are still having issues with it. I've already said this before, but I encourage people who are still having issues with prototypes to go through and just type out these examples as we go along to try to get a feel for how these objects work and what the relationship is between them using prototypal inheritance. And with that, I think we are done with this section and stuff and things. I'll see you guys in the next video.